on this as well. Like his arrangements are some of my favorites on the album, and we recorded his side of the album. He said, let's go and record in this place called Abbey Road Studios. So we went over to London, recorded with an English symphony orchestra in Abbey Road Studios, in the huge Studio A and Studio B. Yeah, it just. I had again. It's incredible. They said, "Yeah, I'm pinching myself right here." And the guy who was our first violinist is actually the first violinist in the same room when Rolling Stones were doing because I did Angie on my album, and he was also the first violinist when they actually played Angie with the Rolling Stones.
Wow.
There you go. There you go.
Circle of life, really.
It is, huh?
I want to get into some of your process here. How do you prepare for roles in musicals? Is it the same for each show, or is it different depending on the character?
It's preparing for each show requires a whole different way. I approach everything really, in a similar way. Like, I do as much reading as I can about the era, or about, I do watch a lot of movies about, or documentaries about the era, and about if it's a real life character, then of course I read biographies or autobiographies or whatever I can, histories about this. So research is important because it just gives such a it enriches your inner monologue, your inner dialogue about what you should be feeling at the time, or how he would react in certain situations. That the more of that you soak in, the more that becomes second nature to you. You don't have to really think about that too much. I don't think you can ever be too prepared for something. And then secondly, the thing is just learn your lines as well as possible. I really like to know it so well that when you come to the first day of rehearsal, you're off book. I think it's really important because, I've learned from mistakes of arriving at rehearsals and not being off book and having to spend catch up, just trying to write notes and holding the thing, and you're not being, again, about being in the present, being now. You're not in the present now because you're looking at a page. You're trying to see, oh, is that how it's said? I'm looking at the stage direction. That kind of stuff should be done beforehand. I think preparation is your friend. Research and homework before you get to the first day of rehearsals is so crucial to the way that I work anyway, because once I have that in my head, then I can start playing with it, and I start right. And a lot of times as well, at stage direction, and of course the way you interact with other people will help you define, memorize your lines more than anything, but also dictate where your character should feel and how it should do it, because of course it's reactionary. But if you don't have that initial stage of I know what I'm about to say, and I know where I'm heading with this, then you're starting at a point where you're disadvantaging yourself. So I found this really helpful for me. And also, I have a terrible memory. It takes me forever to learn a script. Sometimes I feel like I have the early onsets of Alzheimer's, and I don't mean to make light of it, but it's just kind of like, oh my God, I have a terrible memory, always have. So for me to be as prepared as I can is really stops me stressing about it. Otherwise, I'm always playing catch up.
Don't want that.
Yeah, don't want that. And it's always sometimes I always feel like I do this a couple of times when I feel confident, getting myself confident with the script or whatever I'm trying to say. It's not being method because I don't do it outwardly, but I spend my day walking around the streets thinking, saying the lines to myself, or even saying some of the lines as though it was part of my modern day dialogue, and see how it would respond to that. I think it's really nice to wear your character like a jacket and see how it fits. Do that a couple of times, and it really informs you of how you can inhabit this character and how it inhabits you. Anyway, that's my little thing. I just like doing it for fun more than anything, but it really helped me.
I read somewhere that I think Francis Ford Coppola had dinner with the cast for Godfather and had them do their lines while they're preparing dinner. So this way they were doing their lines, but having to make sauce or making pasta or making the bread, and they still had to do their lines and remember and stay in character. There was like a very interesting
Wow.
test. So you're not in the scene per se, but you're still doing the lines and then reacting in a weird way. Like, oh, it gets you out of your element and keeps you on your toes.
You know what? That makes perfect sense. I love that. I love using props. I mean, because for me, it's like, and then I know what I'm doing I'm doing with my hands. I feel like, well, what am I doing? But if you're given something to do, then it's easy. Then you do the action, what you're supposed to be doing, yet you have to say these lines. So I think it brings out a naturalism, and I think that's a really great technique. I think I'll do that next time. Next time I have to prepare for a character, I'm going to cook dinner. There you go.
Your whole scenes. Now, how do you prepare vocally for singing? Do you do one of these things like what? Celine Dion doesn't talk to anybody all day, I think, the day she sings or something like that, I've heard.
Yeah, some people do it that way. For me, I've learned how important it is to warm up. So I'm quite the opposite. I will not strain myself, and if I find myself a little bit tired, I won't put too much. I'm definitely trying not to speak loud, but I'm not going to whisper. But I definitely want to speak all day, because I want to continue warming up. And in fact, before I have to sing, I do a vocal warm up. I have a warm up app. It's called Warm Me Up. It's actually an app developed by some friends of mine in Australia, and I listen to it, and it takes me about 15 minutes, and that in itself is a wonderful way for keeping my voice like in a good nick. I feel like the first thing I'm singing to the audience is not the song, but because I've already been singing for 15 minutes, I'm in the zone. And it's very important for me to do that. I lost my voice several times when I was in 2012. It was the first time, and I had pharyngitis doing We Will Rock You in 2007, which was bad. So these things scare you when you feel like, oh my God, it makes you realize we are just flesh and bone and blood, and these things can scar. These tissues can tear. They can be strained. So this is our moneymaker right here. Yeah. So we have to take care of ourselves. So, drink lots of fluids. I don't try not to drink any alcohol the day before I'm supposed to do any singing, because that really dries me out anyway. And lots of liquids, and definitely warm up. That's how I prepare myself for singing.
Okay. What about writing a song? Is there a process you go through when you have to write a song? Does it on pen and paper? Or does it just come to you? Do you have to be in front of a keyboard or piano?
Pen and paper? You know what? Pen and paper works for me more than anything else. I love to have pen and paper because it's that, I don't know what it is, that physical thing of putting pen to paper and also being able to scribble it out rather than typing and making a typo. No, you just write it, and it's very organic. And I feel like I can write as fast as I think. So that's all coming out. And rub that. It doesn't make sense. You can write arrows and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure you can do that digitally on paper. On digital paper and digital iPads, etc. But for me, I like the pen and paper method. But there is no. I mean, some songs come to you sometimes in your sleep. Sometimes it takes days to write a song. Sometimes the melody comes first. Sometimes the chords come first. Sometimes it's an idea or you think, oh, it's a clever play on words. I'm going to play with that. Or someone may actually just give me a scenario, and then, or it could be some inspiration you see on the news, something like that. I don't think there's been one way I've written a song for every song I've written has started differently, and I like that about that. It's like I have no idea where this is going, and then something comes out of it. Sometimes a song can come in 5 minutes, like I said, and sometimes I'm still writing the song a year later. That's the thing. It's like I'm constantly reworking the same songs, which sucks. That's why I need to actually have them recorded, because once I have them recorded, I can put them to rest. I can clear my mind of all this clutter which is going on, and think, oh, maybe it should go like this. Maybe it should do this. Maybe you should use that word. What rhymes better with circumference? All these things. Put it to rest, write it, put it down, make it a bolt, and lock it in, and then you can move on. And sometimes I having said that, like, I listen to my old stuff now, and I can't listen to it because I think, oh, I wish I had done that. But at the same time, there it is. It is what it is. It's a moment in time, living in the now. Try not to live in the past. Live in what you're working on now and get that done. And I love this songwriting process. I just started this thing in New York called the Aussie Music Festival NYC. And what it is for Australian singer-songwriters living or traveling in New York. Gives them a chance to showcase their original material in front of a New York audience, like a little showcase, without having to really do too much. You just have to apply online and just message us and tell us when you're going to be in town, so and so and so, and we'll see if the planets are in alignment. But this whole process of hearing people, write new stuff and perform new stuff, I think for me is such an exciting realm into people's psyche, and it's such a beautiful expression of art. It's almost like they're bearing themselves naked in front of you, like bearing their souls and saying, "This is, God, I don't know if you even like this, but I'm going to show you something I wrote. It's about me or something personal. Here it is." And they're not getting paid for it. It's like that. It's just a chance for them to share that with you. I think that's such a beautiful moment that you can share with an audience. And we just had our first one today, and it was so moving and so enthralling for me. I'm enthusiastic and excited for the next one, which hopefully we'll be doing every month.
Nice. Hopefully, it's a good cause.
Yeah.
That's why the artist matters.
That's right, man.
Now, you had your second album in 2011 called More Than Ever. How is that different from the first album?
Well, this is the thing. When I was signed to Universal Records, I didn't really have much artistic license in the whole process. It was kind of like I was signed to Decca, it was a Universal Classic. So this is what my A&R manager wanted to do. This is the album, and I kind of. I said, look, I want more originals and I want to do this. They went, Meg, that's great, but we'll do that for the second album, the third album. Yeah, which never came because the first album was, unfortunately, it was never really released properly through circumstances that were beyond my control because I was signed through INXS to Decca. And INXS were going through this legal battle with their manager, so they didn't sign off on any deal until 9 months after the end of Rockstar INXS. So at that stage, the momentum of anything happened with the show had totally died down. They decided to shelve the album and then release the album 2 years later with no promotion. It was just like, Pah. So it was kind of thing where I went, oh, well, that was no point, and I had no control over anything. It just sort of all came out of my hands. Of course, when you release an album and you write an album and produce an album by yourself, then you have all the artistic freedom. So this is where it was like, okay, this is my baby. I get to choose what songs are there. I get to choose how I do this, who I get to work with, and how long it's going to take. And so from the artwork right up to the way I was going to put it out, I was involved in every aspect of it. And so I'm so proud of the way it's come out. And I was hoping to release it at a time, when I was just doing Rock of Ages on Broadway, so I was allowed to sell it at the merchandise stall, all this kind of thing. It was like great, but then best laid plans of mice and men. It was a whole weird. By the time I released the album and everything, they released me for my contract because they signed my understudy. It was a whole thing. I'm not speculating into why, but it's the kind of thing where I lost my job, and then 2 weeks later my wife left me, and then it was like, oh, so my world's falling apart. Okay, so the last thing I would think about was like thinking about this album, which I just spent so many thousands of dollars producing and creating, and I had a box full of CDs in my cupboard. And I'm like, oh, and I lost all my mojo with it. Having said that, I still have it here, and I love the album, and I sell it at my gigs, and I'm very proud of it.
The show must go on. Really,
the show definitely must go on.
This would probably test you. Did you feel like giving up, or did you say, "How am I going to get through this"? What pushed you?
Yeah, it was. That was a really challenging time in my life, professionally and personally. it just everything just fell around me.